All right, so in light of that, right, so what do these tariffs mean to you and I? Let's chat about this with UNISA economist Dr Mzwanele Ntshwanti, who is joining us this evening. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. So there's been a lot of talks, talk about tariffs and how they're going to affect different industries and stuff, but there are some people who still don't understand that the ordinary man on the street, how will they be affected by these tariffs?
Thank you so much, Bongiwe, for having me. And for ordinary people, I mean, there is quite a lot of South Africans who work in the ports, for an example, who would actually be affected by the tariffs. And there are also a lot of people in South Africa who work in the agricultural sector, in the automotive sector, who would also be affected by the tariffs, because what it simply means is that they would not have jobs, because what happens when tariffs are imposed, you have lower production in the countries because the import costs increases, or there is also a reroute or displacement of the markets, which would then mean, for instance, people that are working in our agricultural sectors in Limpopo, in Mpumalanga, in the Eastern Cape, would then face retrenchments as a result of the tariffs that are imposed by another country. And this is basically how we will see a lot of the people in the economic zones in South Africa being displaced and not having employments, because the companies that are in those areas would have lost the market where they were exporting their goods and services to, which would then mean that they would not be able to employ the people that they were having in their companies. This is how it would ordinarily affect people. But of course, there's been a lot of statistics that have come out indicating the amount of jobs that would be lost in the various sectors, which have been key for our export sector into the United States. So there will be a loss of income. This would likely affect women more, elevate poverty in our country, and worsen the issue of employment. I mean, this is a very, very critical area for our trade, but not only in our international trade as well, because there's various sectors. At this point in time, there's been a commodities boom. Critical minerals are in high demand, and these negotiations, which are very opaque, really affect a lot of industries. I know we're emphasizing manufacturing, agriculture, and automotive, but you will likely have this ripple out also in other sectors of our economies, such as the services sector, as well as the mining sectors.
And there's one thing, of course, that we even heard from the briefing by the ministers, that while, some of the projections may be out there right now, and maybe the worst case scenarios may be looked at, but the real impact, will only be assessed on an ongoing basis, because I suppose it's still too early to tell. So when you look at, of course, the numbers that would place the jobs that could be lost at around 30,000, it could actually be more if the impact is quite huge.
Yes, I mean, the South African Reserve Bank estimated at about 100,000 jobs that could be lost. At this point in time, DTIC is looking at about 30,000 jobs that could be lost. So the numbers will be assessed indeed on an ongoing basis, because again, I mean, trade itself is also very complicated, because you look at the different inputs into the value chain, and what comes into South Africa and what goes out, and which sectors are going to actually be affected. For an example, if you are taking the automotive industry, it is not everything that goes into the car manufacturing is produced in South Africa. So you may have jobs that will also get lost along the value chain, from the assemblers, from the transport, from the import admins to export admins, etc. So there's quite a lot of people that may be affected that will only see as the time goes. But also with the negotiations, the sectors, also you go down into the different companies as well. So it's quite going to be a lengthy exercise, and this is probably why the negotiations have been pushed and pushed and pushed. There's no country really where the tariffs have come into effect, because of the complication of actually administering tariffs in themselves. So indeed, will be something that will actually be ongoing. It actually is a negotiation that take a number of years for countries for these things to come into effect. I think this is another point that the minister at DTIC also impressed, to say it is not easy to get out of certain trade routes, trade negotiations into other ones. And you would also know, Bongiwe, with the ongoing discussions on AGOA, for instance, that has been happening now for at least for the past 2-3 years. So that also illustrates the complexity that come into instituting trade negotiations, but also the administration of tariffs, so, both for the exporter and the importer.
In light of that, then, because I know that the president, government, of course, saying that they're putting measures in place, including some support measures to be able to assist some of those that would be impacted in different industries. But when you look at the ordinary South African, how does government and those even at the helm begin to cushion the blow for many of them?
This is a very important question, actually, and it has not really come to the fore in the discussion. So this in the trade policy could be interpreted as retaliation, but what the South African government, for instance, can do is to make necessary funds to those affected businesses or sectors. For instance, you probably want these consultations in the trade discussions to involve the agricultural minister, the DTIC is already involved, the industry ministry, and also Treasury and the South African Reserve Bank, because you may have to channel what you can call subsidies into those industries to make sure that they remain viable to compete internationally. But you may also want to put measures in place in terms of rerouting your trade to other destinations, which again would take some time to make sure that those jobs are protected. You may have to put in place reskilling and retraining mechanisms for those workers that may be affected. And you may have to have a broader macroeconomic outlook in your economy, and which again, we may want to see some of these maybe coming into effect in the medium-term budget as to how government is going to support industries that may be affected. We've seen such measures take place, for instance, during COVID, where the most hard sectors are sort of redirected cash injections to make sure that you cushion the workers in those industries while you negotiate with of course, the United States, but also maybe with other trade destinations to make sure that jobs are not lost in this transition. And then trying to move workers as well around in the different levels of the value chain. Again, as I was indicating, that then you have a lot of people that are affected in the value chain. So we will need a more thorough strategy, perhaps, in the coming months from the Department of Trade and Industry, including our finance ministry, to make sure that there is a sufficient protection of the industries, particularly as we deal with the issue of youth unemployment in South Africa.
Thank you so much for breaking it down so clearly for us as to how this all trickles down and why South Africans should be worried about what is taking place. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much for talking to us. That was UNISA economist Dr Mzwanele Ntshwanti.